Growing up, I had this idea that if I ever wanted to be happy, then I would have to be in a relationship. And something very specific about that mindset is that it wasn't one of those things where being in a relationship is one of the things that could make me happy. It was the only thing. Doing stuff like reading or watching movies or TV shows or things like that would bring me a very specific kind of joy, but it wasn't the happiness I was looking for, because the happiness I was looking for was in a relationship. That thing that I had, I didn't know it was a bad thing to have. I just thought it was a thing that everybody had. You know, you see it in movies all the time. You see it in books all the time. You see it everywhere, that people are happy when they're in relationships, as long as the relationship is good. And then in my sophomore year of high school, I was diagnosed with anxiety. And I know that anxiety is different for many different people, but for me, it was this constant swirling in my mind where different thoughts could manifest and continuously swirl. And one of the thoughts that would continuously swirl is, if I'm not happy, it's because I'm not in a relationship. I need to be in a relationship to be happy. And something about having anxiety attacks is that after you've had that mental breakdown where you can't do anything, you're shot into this need to do something to avoid the stuff that you're having anxiety attacks. Because if, in my case, I'm in a relationship, I can't have anxiety attacks about not being in a relationship. So off I set to find one, to swoon every single girl that I've ever seen so that they can be in a relationship with me. Truth be told, it's very hard to swoon somebody into having a relationship with you, especially when you are me. So it would be this pattern that I would ask a girl out, and she would see on my demeanor and on my face that I wasn't looking for her. I was just looking for everything that she could give me emotionally. And naturally, she would say no. And she would say no, 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 until my junior year, I was diagnosed with depression. And the thing is that I didn't know that I was falling into a depression until I was diagnosed with it, but I could feel myself losing those little joys from watching movies and reading books and writing and doing other things that gave me that small amount of joy that I could hang on to. And at the time, I had this huge crush on this girl. Her name was Samantha. And as I felt myself losing those pieces of joy, I just gave them to Samantha in an emotional, metaphorical sense. Because my thought process was, once Samantha and I are dating, she'll give me those pieces of happiness back, and I won't be depressed anymore, because relationships solve everything. So I went to a very good friend of mine. His name is Brian. And he and I were speaking, and he told me it would be a good idea if I considered treating myself half the way that I would want to treat other people, because even then, I would be happy on some level. And I asked him, what exactly do you mean by that? And he said, you should probably take yourself out on a date. I said, what? Take myself out on a date? I don't know. I've never taken anybody out on a date before. How do you want me to do that for me? And he said, just spend some time with yourself. Do things that you want to do. Be you for you. So the next day, I skipped school. Well, I didn't skip school. I called in sick. I skipped school. And I stayed home, and I had the entire house to myself. And I did everything that Brian said I should do. Watched my favorite movies, ate my favorite foods, mac and cheese with hot dog crumbles on top. You know. I spent the entire day by myself. And at the end of the day, I was reviewing how did I feel during the entire time I was with myself, and it was terrible. The entire day, every time I did something new, I only thought this would be so much better if I was with somebody else. And at that point, I was terrified because it wasn't, this would be so much better if I had a girlfriend. It was just, this would be so much better if anybody was here. And I hated just spending time with myself so much that I was willing to ignore that so that other people could be in the room, so that I could escape this. Something about that is when you know you want to change and you don't know how to, and then you feel the situation getting worse and everything you're trying isn't necessarily helping, naturally, you get angry. And so in my anger, I did the one thing that calms me down, which is sit at the computer and type. I wrote stories, I wrote poetry, I wrote fiction, I wrote nonfiction, and of all the stuff I wrote, my favorite was what you're about to see today. So, without further ado, my name is Ethan Baez. This is a collaborative piece with some dancers from our school, and it is entitled First Date. Thank you.
I once went on a date with the man in the mirror. I once went on a date with the man in the mirror. Although I can't remember who asked who out, I can tell you there was no way I thought the night would end well, and even though we were very much alike, I couldn't help but notice what made our first date our last. The night started out smoothly. We ordered the same food, drank the same drinks, liked the same music. We even finished each other's sentences. He was respectful to the waitress, but his focus was me. He knew how to give a compliment without coming off too pushy. I could tell he was trying to turn a you and me into a we, and he was doing pretty good, but I still couldn't seem to enjoy his company. He had a sweet voice with an even sweeter stare, and he treated me like he knew love was in the air, and even though his eyes were enchanting, he and I were nowhere near connecting. You see, he was better than me. He was the me I wanted to be, the me without all the insecurities. And while he was comfortable in his own skin, my heart, he could not win. Instead, I was much more interested in the waitress. Every time she passed us, I tried to memorize the parts of her face I never wanted to miss, and even though he was trying to tell me he felt terrorized, every word from his lips I dismissed, for it was her lips I so desperately longed to glimpse, to kiss. I cared about the waitress. I was willing to ignore him so I can continue to gaze at her, because although he could make me much happier, she was much prettier. I didn't know she would never make me as happy as he, and even though he was trying to turn a you and me into a we, I was trying to turn a her and I into something. What was worse was that I didn't want him as much as he wanted me, and she wanted him more than she wanted me, because he is me without the insecurity. She saw a man who knew how to sit straight, how to laugh happily, how to smile exuberantly, and she looked right through the pathetic boy who slouched across the amazing man. She noticed every way he is not me. He is me without the uncertainty, the one without the vulnerability, without the difficulty. He has the happiness, the one without awkwardness. He has the fearlessness, the one who is not meaningless. She loves that. She loves him, because even though he and I told the same jokes, liked the same music, drank the same drinks, ate the same food, he is always in a much better mood. He is the me I want to be, because I'm too busy dealing with all these insecurities. And she only wants him because he knows why I will never have her. He knows the truth I have tried to let rot, an indisputable truth my stubborn mind has foolishly rendered not, forever doomed to an isolated shelf in the back of my heart. Before you love others, you have to love yourself.